Welcome into this week's Degrees of Science. This week we're talking about a cool product that the National Weather Service and the CDC is putting out to help people get prepared for extreme summer heat. So today we're talking with Kimberly McMahon to talk about the HeatRisk product that y'all have. Now, Kimberly, before we dive too deep into it, when people think of weather being a danger, you think of severe weather and storms and stuff like that. But how dangerous can extreme heat be?
Well, actually, heat is the #1 weather-related killer in the United States, and it actually can kill people, and there are varying degrees to which people are exposed that make them more susceptible to heat.
So you are come out with this new product called the HeatRisk map that you have. What exactly is this product, and why do you think it's so important?
To put it plainly, the heat risk is taking the forecasted temperature, putting it into climatological context, so how abnormal is the heat, and then marrying that with the CDC's heat health data to show that the heat is going to actually impose a risk on human health. So it's a color and number based index that uses high resolution climatology data with that CDC mortality data to provide a forecasted risk of heat-related or heat health-related impacts to occur over a 24-hour period. And we have a variety of colors. There's 4 different main categories on heat risk that help people know how bad is that heat and what does it mean to them.
So it's one real nice thing with you. Like I said, you got the color-coded and you got the levels to it. So when those levels go up, how much more risk is there and how much should people change kind of their day-to-day activities based on that?
So I'll go from, I'll say, bottom to tops, the least intense heat. We have the yellow or minor category, and that's really for people who are heat sensitive, those who may be working outdoors, maybe pregnant, young children or older adults, those with chronic medical conditions, people who generally are more sensitive to heat and more susceptible to developing heat illness. Then as we move up the scale, we go into our orange or moderate level. And again, the same people in yellow will be affected. But if you have access to adequate cooling and hydration, when you're outside, that heat is still going to be uncomfortable. But you can also wind up putting yourself at risk if you are used to being inside most of the time with air conditioning and go to an outdoor event or do rigorous activity outdoors. So that level of orange or moderate, you should start taking precautions. But then when we get to red or major, everyone's going to feel the heat. Everyone's going to be impacted by it if they don't have easy access to cooling and adequate hydration. And then we have a magenta level, which is extreme. And that really is for our long duration, possibly record-breaking events. So long duration and very intense heat, and everyone's going to be impacted by that. But of course, those who are most sensitive throughout all those categories are going to get the brunt of the health impacts.
So we've already have excessive heat warnings and heat advisories that are put out by the National Weather Service, and a lot of people look at the heat index. How is this going to be different from some of the other products that come out to try to warn people about the heat?
There's a couple of unique things about heat risk. One, it really does put the forecasted heat into context of how abnormally hot it is because it uses that climatology. But then 2, it also compares not just the maximum temperature, but the minimum temperature too, because if we're not getting cool enough overnight to provide relief, the impacts on our body actually accumulate day after day. And then 3, it takes a look at the duration. Is it 2 days of abnormally hot temperatures? Is it 3 days? And if you're reaching, for example, 3 days of major category, well, maybe that 3rd day will actually wind up being extreme because, again, people's tolerances to heat go down as the heat continues. And of course, there's that CDC mortality data that's built in. So every single location for heat risk gives that very local information of how abnormally hot is it and does it pose a risk to human health. And it goes out to 7 days. So you can use this to help you prepare, to help decision makers take action when they see orange, red, or magenta in the forecasts on days 5, 6, and 7 before excessive heat watches, warnings, or heat advisories are issued.
So as we go into the summertime hot months, you're gonna have your parts of the country that are just typically hot all the time. You talked some about the climate data. So will there be times that parts of the country may not actually be hot as others, but will have a higher risk than some of those places that are typically hot?
Exactly. So part of what makes heat risk unique is that it takes into account that generally the human body can acclimate to the heat over the course of about a week or two. So in the early spring, your body's not going to be used to the heat. So if you have an early season event, you'll have potentially red, major, or even the magenta extreme, though those temperatures, the air temperatures may be cooler than, say, a July event.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like I said, it makes it where you kind of plan, and if you're traveling somewhere, kind of take into account for that. So again, as we're heading into the summer months, this heat risk map's going to be really useful. What are some other just basic summer heat tips that the National Weather Service would like to pass along to people?
Well, you mentioned earlier that when people think of hazardous weather, they don't really think of heat as being a hazardous event, but it is, and you can plan for it. You can create a plan that includes making sure you have lots of bottled water that's clean and drinkable. If you have a home where you can put window treatments up to help block the sun and keep your house cooler, know a cool part of your home that you can go to should their house get warm and you need to just hang out in a cooler area of your home. But then also have a plan for places that you can go to if the power goes out or if your air conditioner stops working. So that way you can find a cool place to go to, whether it's just having to go to the mall for a few hours, go to the movies, a public library, but then also there's cooling shelters that are set up by local officials. So really understanding and having a plan, what you can do, and check on your neighbors, loved ones, friends to make sure that they're doing okay, they're able to stay hydrated and cool, and that's throughout the day, not just at the beginning of an event, but making sure that they're staying cool at night, because sometimes, especially in like the Pacific Northwest heat wave that occurred in 2021, houses did not cool off overnight, and houses actually retained that heat inside more so than the outside temperatures.
Well, Kimberly, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Really, really cool tool. I think this will help people plan out, again, when big heat waves are moving in. So again, it's the heat risk map. We'll put a link on this interview for that. But Kimberly, thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
You're welcome. Pleasure speaking with you.